Welcome to UrbanWise Podcast. Today, we're diving deep into a really crucial topic for our future, actually. It's all inspired by Melike Şenkal's blog post, Building Sustainable Cities, the Future of Urban Living.
Uh,
You flagged this one, said it was important, and yeah, we're going to unpack its core ideas
hmm
about how our cities are changing and what's really driving this move towards sustainability.
Exactly. And our goal today really is to pull out the most critical insights from this piece. The fundamental reasons why making our cities sustainable isn't just a nice to have anymore, plus the innovative solutions people are exploring, and, well, why this should be on your radar if you're thinking about the big picture. We'll look at the pressures from rapid urban growth, climate change, of course, and then get into the practical strategies for making cities, greener and more livable.
Okay, let's get into it then. Senkel's blog post, it really hits hard on just the sheer scale of urban growth, doesn't it? And the ripple effects. I mean, think about the basic demands, more land, more water, more energy. It just puts this massive strain on infrastructure that leads to overcrowding, terrible transportation issues, waste problems. We see it all over. The post mentions things like deforestation, water pollution, air quality getting worse. Have you seen some striking examples of that playing out?
Well, yeah, and what's fascinating, or maybe worrying, is how interconnected it all is. It's not just separate problems. As more people move to cities, the resource demand, it doesn't just go up, it kind of escalates.
Hmm.
Like needing more housing drives sprawl, which eats up natural areas and makes commutes longer, which makes traffic and emissions worse. You see cities struggling with both, right? Housing and gridlock.
Right, exactly. And then the blog draws this really direct line between cities and, well, the huge challenges, climate change and public health. All that concentration of industry, cars, buildings. Cities are major greenhouse gas emitters. They're directly fueling global warming. We need to grasp the actual impacts, like more heat waves, more extreme weather, and who's most vulnerable when these things hit.
Yeah, and if you think bigger picture, cities have always been economic engines, but historically they've had this huge environmental footprint, this concentration of emissions. It's not abstract. It means real health risks, respiratory problems from bad air, the dangers of heat waves, especially for people without AC or good healthcare access. So sustainability, it's not just environment, it's also about fairness, about social equity within the city itself.
Okay, so let's unpack this idea of green infrastructure then. The blog really pushes these nature-based solutions. What does that actually look like in a city? We're talking parks, yeah, green roofs, maybe community gardens. But beyond just looking nice, how do they actually work as carbon sinks and, help clean the air in a real way?
That's a great point. They're definitely more than just decoration. Think of trees and plants literally breathing in CO2, photosynthesis, right? They lock away those greenhouse gases.
Yeah.
That's the carbon sink effect. And for air quality, plant leaves trap tiny particles, absorb pollutants like nitrogen dioxide. They act like natural filters. A perhaps less obvious benefit. Big green spaces cool things down. They provide shade, reduce that urban heat island effect. Studies show actual temperature differences, sometimes several degrees, between green areas and, well, concrete ones.
And the post also talks about green infrastructure for water management, flood prevention, things like permeable pavements, rain gardens, restoring wetlands. How do those actually work to soak up rainwater and stop pollution getting into rivers and stuff? It seems like a clever way to use nature.
It is clever. Instead of just concrete drains rushing water away, these methods sort of mimic the natural water cycle. Permeable pavements let water seep through, reducing runoff, which causes flooding, and it also helps recharge groundwater. Rain gardens, those shallow planted areas that catch rain, let it filter slowly into the ground. The plants and soil clean out pollutants and wetlands. They're like natural sponges. They soak up extra water during storms, release it slowly, and they're great habitats too.
Right. And the last point on this, the blog mentions biodiversity in cities. How can deliberately bringing in natural ecosystems help wildlife, like birds and pollinators, even in a dense city? And why does that ecological balance matter for a city's resilience, especially with climate change happening?
Well, it's this cool idea that even in, a concrete jungle, you can create havens for nature. Planting native species, creating green corridors linking parks. That gives food, shelter, pathways for birds, insects. And this biodiversity, it isn't just a nice to have, it's key for a healthy urban ecosystem. Pollinators, like bees, are vital for urban farms, even just keeping parks healthy. Plus, a more diverse ecosystem is generally tougher. It can handle stresses like climate change better because different species adapt differently.
Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting for a lot of people, how we get around our cities. The blog says expanding public transit is absolutely key. Investing in metros, electric buses, maybe even high-speed rail between cities. What's the main benefit, the core advantage of really shifting away from everyone relying on their own car?
The core advantage, definitely, looking big picture, is a huge cut in greenhouse gas emissions from transport. That's a massive contributor to climate change. But beyond that, good public transit eases congestion, less time stuck in traffic, better air quality right there. And it helps with social equity too, right? Affordable, accessible options for everyone, connecting people to jobs, schools, healthcare, no matter their income or if they can own a car.
And the piece also really champions active mobility, walking and cycling, making those primary ways to get around. What kind of infrastructure do we actually need to make cities properly pedestrian and cyclist friendly? It's got to be more than just, a painted line on the road, right? And how does that not only cut emissions, but also affect people's health directly?
Yeah, that's a critical point about designing cities for people, not just cars. We need dedicated, protected bike lanes, physically separate from traffic, well-kept sidewalks, safe crossings, maybe pedestrian zones in central areas, and the benefits. Lower emissions, obviously,
Yeah.
but also it builds physical activity into daily life. That means better public health, less obesity, heart disease, even better mental well-being, and, frankly, nicer streets.
The blog also talks about electric vehicles, EVs, and car sharing programs growing. How do they fit into this sustainable transport puzzle? And what about government help, like expanding charging networks or offering tax breaks? Can that really speed things up?
Well, this is where technology definitely supports the broader goals. EVs cut out tailpipe emissions, which cleans up city air directly. Car sharing can mean fewer cars overall, less congestion, less need for parking everywhere. But yeah, to really make these mainstream, government support is pretty crucial. Investing in lots of reliable chargers is a big one. Financial incentives help tax credits, rebates, and policies that kind of nudge people towards shared options.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit now to how our cities get their power. The blog stresses moving to clean energy, solar, wind, hydro to break that fossil fuel dependency. How can cities actually encourage this shift, both for businesses and for homeowners? Are there interesting models like those community solar projects?
Right, because energy is another huge source of urban emissions. So moving to renewables is vital. Cities can lead by example, powering their own buildings with renewables. To get others on board, they can offer things like tax breaks, make permits for solar panels easier to get, maybe use feed-in tariffs where people get paid for extra energy they send back to the grid. And yeah, community solar is a great model. It lets people benefit from solar even if they rent or their roof isn't suitable. They share a bigger installation.
The blog also brings up smart grids and energy efficiency in buildings. How do smart grids actually optimize electricity flow and cut waste? And what are some of those key efficiency technologies mentioned, like smart meters or LED lights, that really make a difference?
This is where tech gets pretty impactful. Smart grids use digital communication, sensors to monitor and manage electricity flow in real time. They can react to changes in demand and supply instantly, which cuts energy loss and makes the grid more stable. Smart meters give detailed energy use data to utilities and to you, the consumer, so you can make better choices. And in buildings, LEDs use way less energy than old bulbs. Better insulation cuts heating and cooling needs. Smart thermostats adjust temps automatically. It all adds up.
And finally, on energy, the post touches on digital innovation, specifically the Internet of Things, or IoT, helping with sustainability. How can all these connected devices and data help manage resources like energy, waste, water better? Can you give some concrete examples, like how smart city tech improves daily life while being sustainable, maybe optimizing traffic or waste collection?
Yeah, the power of IoT is that real-time data and enabling more efficient management. You can have sensors all over the city monitoring traffic flow, how full public bins are, water pressure, you name it. Then you analyze that data to, say, adjust traffic light timing, reroute garbage trucks only where needed, spot water leaks early. It provides amazing insights for planning, too.
Huh.
Ultimately, it means using resources better, saving money, and just making the city work more smoothly for residents.
Okay, let's turn to something often overlooked, waste management. The blog notes traditional landfills cause pollution and emit methane, a potent greenhouse gas. What are the key strategies it suggests to move away from just burying trash, like better sorting, composting? And what about handling e-waste?
Yeah, it brings up this basic need to just rethink our whole relationship with stuff and waste. The blog rightly focuses on reducing waste in the first place, but also having really effective systems for sorting recyclables and large-scale composting for organic waste. That diverts a huge amount from landfills.
Mm.
And e-waste, electronic waste, that's critical because it has valuable materials but also hazardous stuff. Needs proper recovery and management to avoid pollution and, wasting resources.
The post also introduces the circular economy concept, this model focused on reuse, recycling, keeping resources in play longer. How can businesses and city governments actually push this forward, maybe through things like sustainable packaging or rules about single-use plastics?
Well, the core idea of the circular economy is ditching that take, make, dispose linear model for something more regenerative. Businesses are key. They can design products to last, be repairable, recyclable, use sustainable packaging. Cities can drive it with policies. Think deposit return schemes for bottles, rules cutting down single-use plastics, and just strengthening recycling programs overall.
The blog also mentions some exciting new technologies in waste management. What are some examples? Like AI sorting or waste-to-energy plants? How do they offer better alternatives?
Right, technology is definitely offering some promising solutions here. AI-powered sorting. It can make separating recyclables much faster and more accurate. Less contamination means the recovered materials are more valuable. And waste-to-energy plants, they use advanced tech to turn non-recyclable waste into electricity or heat, reduces landfill volume, and generates energy.
We've covered a lot of ground tech policy, but it's clear that's not the whole picture. The blog really stresses how vital community engagement is. What kinds of education or awareness campaigns can actually encourage residents to adopt greener habits day to day?
Yeah, this is key. Recognizing that all those individual actions, when added up, have a massive impact. Things like school programs, public campaigns explaining the benefits of sustainable actions, making information really easy to find on recycling, saving energy, transport options. It empowers people to make better choices.
And grassroots movements, citizen action, the blog highlights those too. Can you think of examples like community gardens, maybe carpooling networks? Why are these bottom-up efforts so important for that sense of ownership?
Absolutely. These community-led things build a really powerful sense of shared responsibility. Urban gardens, they provide local food, green space, sure, but they also build community ties, raise awareness about where food comes from. Carpooling, bike shares, organized locally, they show collective action works for cutting emissions right at the neighborhood level. It creates this sense of investment, encourages more people to get involved.
And finally, the post talks about corporate responsibility. How can businesses really weave green practices into how they operate and support local sustainability efforts? Why is their involvement so crucial for bigger change?
That's a fundamental point, but the private sector's influence. Businesses have a big footprint, operations, supply chains, products, so their commitment to being greener across the board is absolutely critical. And when they actively support local projects with money, expertise, whatever, it doesn't just help the community, it shows leadership. It sets an example, hopefully encourages others, and just speeds up that shift to a sustainable economy.
So, after all that, what does this mean for you, listening? This deep dive into Melike Şenkal's Building Sustainable Cities. Well, it paints a picture of a really comprehensive, interconnected approach. It needs innovation in infrastructure, in technology, and maybe most importantly, in our own behavior. We've seen that creating truly sustainable cities isn't just a top-down thing. It's got to be this collaborative effort, individual actions, corporate responsibility, supportive government policies, all working together.
Exactly. And the blog ends with this really compelling vision, doesn't it? Cities where nature and urban life aren't fighting but coexisting. Powered by clean energy, minimal waste. It sounds idealistic, maybe, but it feels like an achievable goal if we actually pursue the kinds of solutions we've been talking about today.
Which leads to a really interesting final thought for you. Considering all these different aspects we've touched on, green infrastructure, transport, energy, waste, community, what one area do you personally think holds the most potential to really drive significant positive change in our cities?
Yeah.
And why that one? It's definitely something to mull over as you think about the future of our urban world.